Come on, y'all. Give Yahweh some praise. Y'all, that was lousy. Give Yahweh some praise. I don't know about y'all, but I have joy in my spirit today. I just thank him. Thank him for waking me up and allowing me to see another Sabbath. And, man, just to be living, to be breathing, right? How many of y'all out there is happy and grateful to be living and breathing? Come on now. Come on now. And everything that is going on right now, you guys, we are blessed. We are blessed. So we're going to start off with this one. This one is called Highest Praise. Today we want to give the Most High the highest praise. That's right. Come on, somebody. Come on, play that track. Turn it up for me. All right, let's start it over. We're going to do that one more time, y'all. It's okay. We're going to get it right. We're going to get it right. We're going to get it right. How was y'all week? Had a blessed week. Made it. And now we're here on at the Sabbath, a day of rest. some praise, y'all. Come on, that was lousy. Come on. When you think of the goodness of the Most High God, y'all ought to give him some praise right now. Because, see, I don't know about you, but I'm glad today. I have joy, unspeakable joy in my spirit. And can't nobody take that away from me. You know what I'm saying? All right, let's do that next one and give y'all a little dance.
That's right.
Come on.
Come on.
Now, this one y'all know, so y'all can stand up and dance and sing along. It's all right. We ready, Yosh? All right, while we doing that, we gonna stand on y'all feet. I want to see the kids stand up and do your little crap.
A spirit,
Gladness and peace.
a spirit, so zealous in me, I feel it,
It's taking over.
over me, I'm willing to be all I can be, yeah. Makes me wanna clap my hands, makes me wanna do my dance, makes me wanna shake my fringes, makes me wanna hug my kindred, makes me wanna keep these laws, makes me wanna testify, makes me wanna leave this world and wave goodbye. No trip and let your Holy Spirit run down. No cap and fill me up, I need your love now.
No trip and let your Holy Spirit run down. No cap and fill me up, I need your love now.
Makes me wanna clap my hands, makes me wanna do my dance, makes me wanna shake my fringes, makes me wanna hug my kindred, makes me wanna keep these laws, makes me wanna testify, makes me wanna leave this world and wave goodbye. A spirit of gladness and peace,
A spirit,
so zealous in me,
I feel it.
it's taking over me.
I'm willing.
To be all I can be, yeah.
Makes me wanna clap my hands. Makes me wanna do my dance. Makes me wanna shake my fringes. Makes me wanna hug my kindred. Makes me wanna keep these laws. Makes me wanna testify. Makes me wanna leave this world and wave goodbye.
No trip and let your Holy Spirit run down. No cap and fill me up, I need your love now.
No trip and let your Holy Spirit run down. No cap and fill me up, I need your love now.
Raise your hands to the sky.
Come on, y'all.
If you love the Most High, raise your hands to the sky. If you love Yahweh, shout say.
Raise your hands to the sky. If you love the Most High. Raise your hands to the sky. If you love your Most High. Raise your hands to the sky. If you love the Most High.
Raise your hands to the sky.
Raise your hands to the sky.
If you love the Most High.
If you love the Most High.
Raise your hands to the sky.
Raise your hands to the sky. Raise your hands to the sky. Raise your hands to the sky. Raise your hands to the sky. Wave goodbye. Makes me wanna clap my hands. Makes me wanna do my dance. Makes me wanna shake my fringes. Makes me wanna hug my kin. Makes me wanna keep these laws. Makes me wanna testify. Makes me wanna leave this world and wave goodbye.
Okay, sorry y'all. We're about to get on track right now.
Say true nation, true nation. No. Say true nation, true nation. Hey, true.
All right, now here we go. Say true nation, yeah.
True nation, true nation, hey.
True nation, hey.
True nation, true nation, hey.
True nation, yeah.
True nation, true nation, hey.
True nation, hey.
True nation, true nation, hey. Makes me wanna clap my hands. Makes me wanna do my dance. Makes me wanna shake my fringes. Makes me wanna hug my kindred. Makes me wanna keep these laws. Makes me wanna testify. Makes me wanna leave this world and wave goodbye. Woo!
You may be seated. What up, Bosh? All praise be to the Most High. What's going on, sis? How you doing? All praises. Good to see everybody that's here. Good to see all our visitors, the ones that's coming back. It's always a beautiful thing to see y'all. Good to see you. Good to see you. All right. All praise be to the Most High. Yeah, yeah. Even got Johnny in the building right here. What's up, man? All praise be to the Most High. Well, let's get into it. First and foremost, the title of this afternoon's lesson is New Moon, Ancient Custom. New Moon, Ancient Custom. All right. Here's the thing. I want to never be in a place where I'm being prideful. And if there's ever such a situation, I want to always make sure I make it right. All right. One thing that I try to stand by in my walk is, if I'm wrong, to try to make it right. All right. So, been in this truth, in this walk for 10 years, over 10 years now. And one of the things that I was taught and that I've taught others is when to observe the new moon. All right. I was taught to observe the new moon during, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Akim, during the astronomical new moon, right? The astronomical new moon is speaking of the conjunction. The conjunction is when it actually happens 2 times in a month, right? But the one specifically where the moon, let me make sure I'm getting this right. The one where the earth is on the outside and the moon is in between the earth and the sun. Is that correct? All right. That right there is called the conjunction, in which the astronomical, if you're going by astronomical reasoning, they now classify that as the new moon, meaning the first day of a month. That's what we were taught. That's what we were given from our leaders. And that's what we have been keeping and teaching, right? So, comes to a situation where it's like, okay, the Bible says prove all things. Looking at that, because we've been fine-tuning, trying to make sure that we're right, and we're doing things the right way to the very best of our ability. And we got more than enough scripture as well as, historical references to show us a lot of the things that we need to be able to keep these laws, right? So the question was posed, can we definitively show and prove that the absolute dark moon, where there is no light at all, is indeed the first day of the month? And so this isn't something that I took upon myself and said, hey, I got a new revelation. This is what it is. I didn't do that. I didn't just keep it between the 3 of us. We took a number of our men, our astute men, who are, known to be able to bring something to the table in terms of giving scriptural understanding. And we all said, okay, let's all go to the drawing board. Let's all do our research, bring it to the table. If anybody can bring any evidence of the completely dark moon being the new moon, meaning the first day of the month, then that'll mean something. And if no one can actually find anything, then we'll pretty much have our answer. In conjunction with that, you have brothers that prayed and fasted. So it was conclusive. Nobody could find any information showing that the astronomical new moon, the conjunction, was indeed the biblical new moon. Therefore, we have the lesson today. Go to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. I want 9 and 10.
Book of 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and verse 9.
Uh-huh.
For we know in part, and we prophesy in part.
So the Bible says we know in part and we prophesy, meaning we teach this Bible in part at times. We don't know everything. That doesn't mean, because some people take it to the extreme. Ain't none of y'all right. All of y'all, we might as well wait till we get there. That's not what the Bible says. But it does give us some understanding that there are going to be some things that we may not get right off the bat. But watch this, read.
But when that which is perfect has come.
But when you do have that which is perfect, meaning that which is complete, a more complete understanding of whatever it is, go ahead.
Then that which is in part shall be done away.
Then you got to do away with that. Never wanted to be in a situation, because we've seen that over the years, where brothers feel that they've been teaching something for so long, and pride kind of comes over you and say, man, this is what we've been doing, and we're going to keep doing this. We know that obviously there's probably going to be some backlash. It is what it is. I don't care about what men think. I care about the Most High, and I care about being judged if I don't do the right thing by the flock. All right? So go from there. Get Wisdom of Solomon chapter 9. Wisdom of Solomon chapter 9, and let's read 13 through 16.
Book of Wisdom of Solomon chapter 9 and verse 13.
Mm-hmm.
What man is he that can know the counsel of God?
So who can know the counsel of the Most High? Because some people take it there. They think they know it all. We don't know it all. But it is our job to search out the matter. It is our job to be as much knowledgeable and have as much understanding as we can, because it's our job to actually relay that to the people. All right, read on.
Or who can think what the will of the Lord is?
Go ahead and read.
For the thoughts of mortal men are miserable,
Uh-huh.
and our devices are but uncertain.
Our devices are uncertain. Sometimes we depend and more so rely upon various different devices. Sometimes we can get caught up into certain things, even science, that we think is legitimized, but it's not necessarily legitimized for us in the functionality of keeping these laws. All right? Science is a really good thing, especially when you deal with actual science, because science is, in its simplest form, how things work. All right? But we got to be careful, because sometimes we get caught into certain aspects of science, right, that are not necessarily reflective of what this Bible says, right? And it doesn't mean that, well, the Bible can't be right because science says this. Some science is straight up BS. It's a lie. It's fabricated. Some science is just misinterpreted. It's legitimate, but contextually, you're not using it in the right way in regards to whatever the subject may be. What you'll find as you begin to research more and more is that the Bible absolutely positively lines up with true science. It lines up historically and scientifically, and that is still the primary source utilized by scientists, not even just scientists today, but scientists of old, all right, as well as historians. But go ahead and read.
For the corruptible body presseth down the soul.
So we're talking about us as men. Go ahead.
And the earthly tabernacle weigheth down the mind that museth upon many things.
So this earthly tabernacle, it limits us in what we can and cannot do. You know, sometimes it's things that we want to do. We want to do so much more. We want to continue. Imagine being able to research for 500 years versus 50, right? But we're limited as to what we can do. Go ahead, 16.
And hardly do we guess aright at things that are upon earth.
A lot of things we guess at in terms of the things upon the earth, and he said most times we don't even get them right. We usually are able to get things right when we go and we prove things according to archaeology. We prove things according to history. We prove things according to this Bible. That's when we start getting stuff right. That's what we had to do. Go ahead.
And with labor do we find the things that are before us.
With labor. Sometimes things are right before us, but we still don't get it. We still got the blinders on. But we got to labor a little bit. We got to go and do our research. We got to examine ourselves. We got to ask ourselves, can I definitively defend this and prove this? And if it's no, then you got to go back to the drawing board. You got to dig in. And that's what we do. Go ahead.
But the things that are in heaven, who have searched out.
That's all I needed. Go from there. Go to Deuteronomy chapter 32 and 7.
Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 7. Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. And ask thy fathers, and he will show thee.
See, the thing is, our fathers will show us. How can our fathers show us when they're dead? This is how they show us. Our fathers made sure that they wrote and preserved this as they were inspired by the Heavenly Father, by Yahweh, right? This is how our fathers speak to us, all right? Through this, through archaeology, through other forms of historical records and proof, right? We had to do that. Go ahead.
Thy elders, and they will tell thee.
That's all I needed. Get the PowerPoint out. So, new moon. Yeah, it's a new moon, but it's an ancient custom, meaning nothing has changed. We observed it back then the same way we're supposed to be observing it now. So the goal is to figure out how we were observing it back then, all right? So the question is, what marks the first day? Because some folks even go on a limb and say it's the full moon. That's the new moon. That's not biblically supported at all. As a matter of fact, it's pretty easily biblically disproved. All right? Go ahead. Go to the next one. Oh yeah, there you go. So a lot of times folks be like, I got a revelation. You get a whole lot of Israelites to get a revelation. And it's all we got to tell them. It ain't that deep sometimes. So I'm not sitting up here talking about I got this divine revelation. What we did was we said, let's examine. This ain't right. I can't prove it. All right, well, we got to go with what we can prove. That's what this is. Go ahead. Here's the thing. I've heard of full moons. I've even heard of blood moons, but I've never heard of a black moon, especially in the Bible. Here's the thing. Some folks, like I said, keep the full moon. They'll tell you that the middle of the month, that's a black moon. That ain't a new moon. It's a black moon. I can't find that supported. All right? Go ahead. The Bible never says the full moon is the new moon. It never says that. Never. So let's dig in. First, before we do that, give me 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 21.
First Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 21. Prove all things.
The Bible says prove some things.
Prove all things.
Prove all things. Prove it. If that's what you say it is, then prove it. What can you prove? Sounds simple, right? All right. Go to book of Ephesians. We're going to get straight to the point. You can leave it right there. We're going to get straight to the point. Go to 1 Corinthians chapter 1. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, and let's read 10 through 15.
The book of 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and verse 10. Now I beseech you, brethren, by the name of our Lord, Mashiach Yahushua, that you all speak the same thing. That there be no divisions among you.
He said that there be no divisions among you. As Israelites, we should not have all these divisions. Now, what does that look like? Because some folks will skew that, right? And they have an agenda behind that. It does not mean that we can't be here and someone else be there, right? Because one of the simple things we got to understand is it would be pretty difficult for you to be in the same place with your brothers and sisters that are in New York, or even the ones that are in Ghana. It would be difficult for you to travel and meet in the same place every Sabbath, every 7-day Sabbath, right? So it made sense in scriptures and let it be known that there were churches all over because they had to have somewhere where the people could get to, right? In addition to that, even sometimes within various different areas and cities, they still had multiple locations, right? But it was supposed to be a situation where everybody in Israel understood that it was one doctrine. It weren't all these various different doctrines that the whole nation were swallowed up by and scattered by. It was a little bit of that then, well, more than a little bit, but it's extreme now. We've been so disconnected from our culture and our heritage, our identity, and our Heavenly Father and our King, where we are super divided, right? But the point is for us, through Yahushua, to start coming together again. Through what? Through this word. Because there's no reason why all of us are reading this word and we're all getting totally different things. So, but we got to be able to do something very important. We got to be willing to submit ourselves to what this Bible says. All right. So that's why the Bible says that there should be no divisions among you. But what?
But they be perfectly joined together in the same mind and in the same judgment.
It didn't matter where Paul went, but he knew that he had to be joined together with his brethren, with Peter and the rest of them in the same mind and in the same judgment, no matter where it was that he was at. That's why Paul, I think it was the Corinthians, he told him, he said, I could judge the matter from where I'm at. He said, I ain't got to be there in person because we supposed to all be on one accord, same judgment. We all got the law, right? Go ahead.
For it hath been declared unto me of you, my brethren, by them which are the house of Cleo, that there are contentions among you.
So I don't need to go into that because he goes into the fact. He says, look, you know, you got Yahushua, all of these different people that say that they believe this truth, believe the doctrine, but they divided, right? But he was making the point that we're all one. Go to Exodus chapter 31. Book of Exodus chapter 31, and let's get 13. And then we're going to drop down to 16 and 17.
Exodus 31, verse 13.
Yep.
Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, saying, verily my Sabbaths ye shall keep.
My Sabbaths, not Sabbath, but Sabbaths. He's letting you know not just the 7-day Sabbath, the weekly Sabbath, but I'm talking about also the other holy days. The other days where we're commanded to come together, to have holy convocations, which means holy assemblies. Go ahead.
For it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am the Lord.
He said that it shall be a sign between me and you. This was the thing that you got to understand. One of the biggest things, because some people mitigate the feast days. It was of the utmost importance to the Most High that everybody was keeping the feast days at the appointed time together. it was understood within the nation at that time how important that was, and that the Most High would be displeased if all of us was keeping different days. It's just like you. If you want a celebration, right, or some type of feast or festivity, or you celebrating your birthday, right, and you would like to have certain people there just in celebration of the blessing that the Most High has bestowed upon you to see another year, right? Are you okay with 2 people coming this day, another person coming that day, somebody else coming a week later, right? No, you want everybody to come on one accord on one specific day, right? So that everybody could enjoy themselves and you can be recognized on that particular day. It's simple. I don't really need the other parts. Go back to the PowerPoint. So Hebrews should not be forbidden or shamed for wanting to look into Hebrew. Why am I saying that? Because some folks, some Israelites teach that you're doing the extras when you try to go and look up words and use certain tools. But it's hypocritical, because oftentimes you'll find that the same ones that say not to do it, they do it. They do it themselves. Now, none of us speak Hebrew, and some will even say that it's a dead language, but it's more to that. You know, it doesn't just stop there. Oh, it's a dead language. What are you doing trying to speak it? Who can speak it? It's going to be restored. I've heard all of that, and I get what you're trying to say. The one thing that we got to understand is Hebrew still survive. As a matter of fact, I've even seen some things, some definitive sources that have showed that even what we call the New Testament, not all of that was written in Greek originally, that there are at least 3 books that were written in the Hebrew. There were still those that spoke the language. Even over here, you have people speaking different dialects of Hebrew. Then you got the legacy that's been left within other languages, right? So it doesn't make sense when you need to get a better understanding to not, or to forsake some of the resources we have, like the Strongs. That's one of the more commonly known sources. It's not forbidden, neither should you feel like it's forbidden for you to use that resource. Go to the next one up. Especially since many opt to take on Hebrew names. How are you going to discourage somebody from looking into some Hebrew words, but you take on Hebrew names? If you name yourself Daniel or what, that's a Hebrew name. I'm not worried about the transliteration, but I'm speaking in terms of the fact that you took your government name that you've been called all your life and you did away with that to be called by a Hebrew name. That says something. All right? Go ahead. So let's go here. You can go if you want to, or you can just read it from here, because it's rather lengthy, but there's one specific part that I wanted to hone in on. All right, this is the book of Ecclesiasticus, also known as the book of Sirach. This is what's known as the prologue. All right. I'm going to read the highlighted part. It says, "Wherefore, let me entreat you to read it with favor and attention, and to pardon us, wherein we may seem to come short of some words, which we have labored to interpret." One of the things that you got to understand, that there's a lot of labor that goes into interpreting a language. To take one language, what it's saying, and then interpret it into another language. There are so many different things that you have to take into consideration to do so and be accurate. All right? We got certain things that we say that are slang, and it's another word I'm looking for. There are idioms, different things that make sense for those that speak that language. But the moment you try to translate that directly into another language, folks are going to be like, what the heck are you talking about? How many of you guys know that? If anybody knows a little bit of Espanol, you'll know that much, right? Correct. So imagine how many different languages has the Holy Bible been translated into? I know when we went to my brothers in Ghana, mind you, there are multiple languages spoken in Ghana, but amongst our particular brothers that were out there, many of them spoke Tree. Not all of them, but the main ones that we were dealing with, the leaders, spoke a language called Tree. They have the Bible translated in Tree. How many of you guys have ever heard of that language? A lot of you guys have never heard of the language, right? So imagine how many languages there are out there, and the Bible is translated in just about all of them. Imagine how much labor had to go into that. Somebody had to be inspired, right? So watch this. He says, for the same things uttered in Hebrew and translated into another tongue, which means another language, have not the same force in them. And not only these things, but the law itself and the prophets and the rest of the books have no small difference. When it says they have no small difference, take the word no out, because it sounds a little confusing when you say no small difference, right? Take the word no out. And if it said have small differences, that means what? Barely any difference, right? So now it's got to be the opposite when we plug the word no back in there. So have no small differences would mean what? It's a big difference. Big differences. So for you to just allow me to just read this and say don't use any other resources, that's asinine. It's ridiculous. There's a lot of different doctrines that are out there outside of what we're talking about today that require for you to have those resources at your disposal. So it says when they are spoken in their own language. Go to the next one out. Proverbs 25:2.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 25 and verse 2. It is the glory of God to conceal it.
It's the glory of the Most High to conceal things. It's a lot of things that have been concealed. They're not for everybody to know. They're not accessible to any and everybody. But go ahead and read.
But the honor of kings is to search out a matter.
But the honor of kings is to actually search those things out. Boy, we be around here, hey, king, 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 king. But hey, if we really kings, he said it's honor in searching these things out. We got to dig in and say, okay, are we really doing this right? Let's dig, let's see, let's make sure. That's exactly what we had to do. Go back to the PowerPoint. So just a quick reference of some of the things, and I'm not going to go too deep into them. Egypt is one of those words that some of the brothers that say, oh, we ain't y'all, the language is dead, y'all, these Israelites. Well, while you tripping over the name and all of that, well, there's the word like Egypt. If you don't go and look into what Egypt means, you may not have an understanding that Egypt means bondage. And there's even other scriptures to solidify that. Easter is another word. Some of these same Israelites have had to go take those very same resources and find out what the Bible meant when it said Easter. Were they actually painting eggs? Okay, here's another one. When it spoke about the hem of his garment, right? They had to do the same thing, because how could you know that the hem was talking about the fringe? Go to the next slide. So here's the thing, the Passover. Go to Psalms chapter 81. Because we got to be able to also prove things scripturally. One thing I will assure you is that the full moon is not the new moon. They are not one and the same. We can go straight into it. Verse 3.
The book of Psalm chapter 81 and verse 3. Blow up the trumpet in the new moon, in the time appointed, on our solemn feast day.
So hold on. Blow up the trumpet in the new moon, in the time appointed, on our solemn feast day. All right? Verse 4.
For this was a statute for Israel, and a law of the God of Jacob. This he ordained in Joseph for a testimony.
Go ahead.
When he went out through the land of Egypt, where I heard a language that I understood not.
Go ahead.
I removed his shoulder from the burden. His hands were delivered from the pot.
So as you go on, this is referencing a specific event. It's referencing the Passover, right? The solemn feast day is talking about Passover, right? We got to examine this. Go to Exodus. We coming back to that, so hold that. Go to Exodus chapter 23. Exodus chapter 23 and verse 15.
Exodus chapter 23 and verse 15. Thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded thee, in the time appointed of the month of Abib. For in it thou camest out from Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty.
So he said the time appointed. It's the same thing that was referenced in chapter 81 of Psalms, right? The time appointed. He said that was talking about the month of Abib. It's talking about unleavened bread, right? The first day being Passover. And he even referenced Egypt, right? Let's go real quick. Go to the next slide. Right here it says, blow up the trumpet in the new moon. In the new moon. Go to the next slide. Moon. The word moon literally means month. It's interchangeable. So that can read, blow up the trumpet in the new moon, or it can also read, blow up the trumpet in the new month. The new month. New month. That changes things a little bit. Go ahead. Go to the next one. New moon, here it is. Kadash. H2320. New moon. You can barely see the red down there. It says new moon or month. It comes from Kadash H2318. And it literally means to rebuild, renew, or repair. Rebuild, renew, or repair. Go to the next one. You got different Hebrew words for moon. All right? The other one is Yarak. Comes from H3394 and also H3391. That it is different and used differently from Kadash, the one that we spoke about, which is referencing either a new moon or a new month. Go to the next one. So now, blow up the trumpet in the new moon or the new month in the time appointed. Time appointed on our solemn feast day. We just talked about what that appointed time was, right? Go to the next slide. The time appointed is during a full moon. So this is not saying that the new moon is the full moon, but what this is showing you is something very important. In that new month, right? During that month, at the time appointed, which happens to be in the middle of the month, which is actually the full moon. Make sense so far? Go ahead. Appointed, Kasa, H3677. That's the word for full moon. From Kasa H3680. And it means the opposite. It doesn't mean to rebuild or renew. It means to plump. So it can't be both moons. But what this is telling you is talking about the new month in the middle of the month, which is the 15th day or the 14th day at even, which is what? Passover, and the first day of unleavened bread. Go ahead. So now, Ecclesiasticus or Sirach, chapter 39 and 12. Let's read that real quick. You can read it from there.
Sirach chapter 39, verse 12. Yet have I more to say, which I have thought upon, for I am filled as the moon at the full.
Not the moon. I'm filled as the moon at the new. Because the new moon takes precedence over the full moon. We see the new moon being referenced as a holy day all throughout the Bible. So why didn't it take that opportunity to give us some clarity and say, I'm filled as the moon at the new? Why? Because that was never the case. Doesn't make sense. Why use filled and full? Why not use filled as the new moon at the new? Simple question. Let's see. Let me go there real quick. I'm about to look at something real quick. Go to the next slide. So, could this be referencing a specific day? Because then when you look at the word feast, you got two different words that are commonly used for feast. You got Chag, H2282, and you also have Moed, which is H41 and 50. Right? So even the bootleg Jews understand that this is a Chag. It's not your average feast, or it's not because you can have a Moed, you can have a feast, you can have a birthday feast, you can have a party. But when it speaks of these Chags, they're specifically talking about certain holy days, certain holy feasts, right? And when you look at the word appointed, it's H3677. All right? I don't know if I mentioned that, but I want to make sure all of that is understood. All right. So now, enough with that. Go real quick. Go to the next slide. Let's go back in history, because the scripture says the things that were written aforetime are written for our learning, right? There's a guy by the name of Philo. Can you read that for me, Yak?
Philo was born a Greek and became a Jewish philosopher who lived from approximately 20 BCE until about 50 CE. Thus, he lived prior to the Messiah's birth.
He lived what?
Prior to the Messiah's birth.
The Messiah, Hamashiach, talking about the one that the world calls Jesus Christ, right? Yahweh Shai. He lived prior, right? So this is a source that's older than Yahweh Shai, right? Someone who lived on this earth before Yahweh Shai actually walked on this earth. Go ahead.
And also the years following his death.
And he actually was still living after Yahweh Shai was crucified. So go ahead. Go to the next one. Here's one of his accounts right here. Here's what Philo observed during the full moon. Philo gives a second witness on mating with the preliminary studies, right? So it says, go ahead and read it for me. One of y'all read it for me, please.
For it is said in the scriptures, on the 10th day of this month, let each of them take a sheep according to his house, in order that from the 10th day there may be considered to the 10th.
Consecrated.
Considered to be consecrated to the 10th. That is to Elohim.
That's Elohim.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The sacrifice which have been preserved in the soul, which is illuminated in two portions of the three, until it is entirely changed in every part.
So now this is referencing what we read in scripture. They would actually take the sheep and the goats on the 10th day and prepare them for slaughter, right? And they would slaughter them on the 14th day at even, right? Right before the 15th day. And then, of course, the 15th day would mark the Passover, right? And from there, they would prepare it, make sure that they didn't break any bones, so on and so forth, and roast the entire lamb or goat. That's what he's referencing. Now watch what he says. Read.
And becomes a heavenly brilliancy like a full moon.
Like a what?
Like a full moon.
A full moon. On that 14th day at even, going into the 15th day, he said a full moon. It's a full moon. At what?
At the height of its increase.
At the height of its increase. It's not at the beginning of the rebuilding process. It's at the height of its increase, meaning it's plump. Go ahead.
At the end of the second week.
And he's very specific. Not at the beginning of the month, not at the beginning of the first week, but at the end of the second week. Pretty simple, right? Go ahead. Go to the next one. Here's another account. Go ahead and read that.
Philo's second account, in special laws, Philo writes, there is one principle of reason by which the moon waxes and wanes in equal intervals, both as its increase and diminishes in illumination. The 7 lambs, because it receives the perfect shapes in period of 7 days.
So he said the 7 lambs, because it receives the perfect shapes in periods of 7 days. Go ahead.
The half moon in the first 7 day period.
So hold on. The half moon, which is also known as the what? It's known as the first quarter. Thank you. It's the phase that's after the waxing crescent phase. Waxing is when it's becoming greater. When it's becoming greater in terms of how much of the moon itself is actually lit up. Waning is after the full moon, when it begins to decrease or diminish, right? So that half moon is talking about what they call the first quarter. So at the half moon or the first quarter, in the first 7 day period, one of the things that you got to understand, and I got some proof here that'll be coming up in a little bit. It was known historically that typically on the 7th day, you had this particular phase, which was the first, keep that up, which was the half moon, or also known today as the first quarter. Go ahead and read.
The half moon in the first 7 day period after its conjunction.
After what?
After its conjunction.
After its conjunction with what?
With the sun.
Its conjunction with the sun. You know what the conjunction is, right? What we spoke about earlier. The conjunction is when the sun, right, the moon and earth are perfectly aligned. That's what they now call the astronomical new moon. But is that what we observed as a people? Because during that time, more often than not, you can't see anything in the sky. Would that make sense? Which I'll show you in a minute in scripture. If we were actually in past times, our forefathers went out to observe and watch, and at the first sight, they would tell the nation that it was a new moon. What could they tell the nation if they couldn't see anything? Right? Go ahead and read.
Full moon in a second.
Full moon in a second. That makes sense. It said at the end of 2 weeks, right? Right? It's crazy because we also got to be careful because we didn't know any better. We was doing what somebody had taught us. But when you start when it's completely dark, instead of the 7th, you usually get around the 8th day when you have what's called the half moon or the first quarter. Well, that's a little bit off. That's a day off. Then when it came to the full moon, you usually have the full moon actually fall on the 16th day. Which that's not typically right because it should be more so like the 15th day. We were shifted a little bit. But if we move over one, then we'll get the 7th and the 15th, which makes sense and lines up historically. Go ahead.
And when it makes its return again, the first is the half moon. Then it ceases at its conjunction
so
with the sun.
So it goes back into what's called the last quarter, right? And then it ceases as its conjunction with the sun. At the very end, there's nothing left. It doesn't make sense for it to be completely void of any light at the very beginning. When you got a plant, when you first see the plant begin to surface is when that's new life. It's made it to the surface. Prior to it making to the surface, it's just like a baby. Yeah, you know a baby is in there, it's been conceived, is growing. But when does the birth happen? The birth is marked at the beginning. It's when that baby actually comes out of the womb. That makes sense, right? Go to the next one out. Go ahead and read that for me.
Philo writes, the first matter to be considered is that of the festivals. Now there are 10 festivals in number, as the law sets them down. The first is that which anyone will perhaps be astonished to hear called a festival. This festival is every day. The second festival is the 7th day, which the Hebrews in their native language call the Sabbath.
Now watch this.
The third is that which comes after the conjunction.
Comes what?
After the conjunction.
Not during the conjunction, but after the conjunction. After the time when there's completely darkness, when everything's aligned. Go ahead.
Which happens on the day of the new moon in each month.
Simple. It is not the conjunction itself, but it is what? After the conjunction. Go to the next one. Go ahead and read that too.
Philo continues. Following the order which we have adopted, we proceed to speak of the third festival, that of the new moon. First of all, because it is the beginning of the month. In the beginning, whether of number or of time, is honorable. Secondly, because this time, there is nothing in the whole heaven destitute of light.
Hold on. That doesn't make sense. There is nothing in the whole whole heaven destitute of light. Then it couldn't be completely dark because that would be destitute of light, right? Go ahead.
Thirdly, because at that period, the more powerful and important body gives a portion of necessary assistance to the less important and weaker body.
So what's the weaker body of the two? If you got the sun and the moon, which one is the weaker one? Okay, so I think we know what we're talking about right here. Go ahead and read.
For at the time of the new moon, the sun begins to illuminate.
It does what?
Begins to illuminate.
It what?
Illuminate.
Begins to illuminate. To illuminate the what?
The moon. With a light which is visible to the outward senses.
With a light that is finally visible to the outward senses, meaning you can actually see it. You can see it. Go ahead.
And then she displays her own beauty to the beholder.
She displays it. It has to be something you can actually see. That's what makes sense. Go ahead. We're going to reference you out today. Go ahead and read that one for me out.
Encyclopedia Judacia. Historically, new moon spotters in Israel watch for the thin crescent.
They watch for what?
The thin crescent.
Historically? Historically or astronomically?
Historically.
Historically meaning what? As far as we know in history, what's recorded, what's known, who did?
New moon spotters in Israel.
In where?
In Israel.
In Israel. That would be where we come from. Go ahead.
Watched.
What did they watch for? Because they literally watched. How are you going to watch for something that you can't see? We stand corrected. I know somebody on there like, see, I told you. Yeah, you told us, and I'll give you that one. But we want to get it right. They watch for what?
For the thin crescent to establish the beginning of each month.
That's what established the beginning of each month. Literally. The thin crescent. Go ahead.
Once seen, they reported their sighting to the calendar court authorities of the Sanhedrin.
So it wasn't just like everybody was, it was something that was big, and it was something that they had people that were watching, and they had to report to the authorities, and it had to be declared. That's why it makes sense now, because the Bible say do what? What you supposed to do in the new moons? Why would they need to blow the trumpet? Did they have telephones back then? Did they have television sets? Now it makes sense. They had to do what? Blow the trumpet. We officially have a new moon. It's officially a new month. That's what makes sense. Go ahead.
Note what one authority says. Originally, the new moon was not fixed by astronomical calculation.
Originally, they know the new moon was not fixed by astronomical calculation. But what?
But was solemnly proclaimed.
Now that solemnly word look familiar. It said on our what? On our solemn feast day. But was solemnly proclaimed after what?
After witnesses.
After witnesses. They had to have something to witness. After witnesses what?
Had testified to the reappearance.
Hold on. Reappearance mean that there's something that has to appear. How you gonna get a reappearance if it ain't nothing there to see? If it's completely black. And it sure ain't no full moon, because it would have appeared many days before. It ain't gonna be, oh, there go a new moon. It just reappeared. It don't work like that. It don't work like that. Testify to the reappearance of what?
Of the crescent of the moon.
The crescent of the moon. Go ahead, go to the next one. Go ahead and read that.
Other sources. The switchover from watching for the first visible crescent to calculating conjunctions to determine the month's beginning came from the Heli second.
So hold on. The switchover, meaning what? At some point, somebody changed something. The switchover from watching the first visible crescent to calculating conjunctions to determine the month's beginning came with Hillel II's calendar revisions. Go ahead.
In the 4th century CE.
Go ahead.
By the middle of the 4th century, the sages had established a permanent calendar, and the public proclamation of the new moon was discontinued.
See, here's the thing. It doesn't say that he's the one responsible for telling folks that the completely dark moon is the first day. But what it's telling you is giving you a little bit of history. It got to a point because of the diaspora, the scattering of our people, where it became more pertinent for them to try to make sure that they could calculate when the new moon would occur so that they can noise it abroad and the people could all be on one accord in keeping the new moon together and the feast days together, because it was that important for Israel to be on one accord. That's why. So it wasn't that he changed it, but it was a switch over from making sure that they had somebody physically out there watching to them trying to do something similar to what we got now, which is the Gregorian calendar, fixed time, or the watch and the clocks that you look at. That's called fixed time. That's not actual time. That's fixed time. For what? For our convenience. But watch this. Go ahead.
Going by the calculated lunar conjunction contradicts the command in Deuteronomy.
Hold on. Is some scripture on this? What did it say?
Observe the month.
Observe the month. Let's go there real quick so you know I ain't pulling your leg. Deuteronomy 16:1. Go ahead and read that.
Observe the month of
Oh, it
Abib.
say the same thing. It say what?
Observe the month.
Observe the what?
The month of Abib.
Observe the month. Now hold on. We read earlier that the word month can be interchangeable with what? Moon. So was it just to observe the month, or was it to observe that moon? Read that one more time for me, Top. Yeah, up there.
The switchover from watching.
Not going by.
Going by the calculated lunar conjunction. Contradicts the
Contradicts the what?
The command.
Command is short for commandment. Commandment. What were we commanded to do?
Observe the month of Abib.
Observe the month, the moon, Kadash, the new moon of Abib. We're supposed to observe that. Meaning they literally had people in Israel that were watching just like they said. Now, how many times have you probably read Deuteronomy 16:1 and you never thought about that? That's why it's good, all praise be to the Most High, to have teachers and sources. Because you need all that you can get to make sure you understand this and we doing this the right way. Who got time to be playing with their salvation? We got to get this right. So when he says observe the month, meaning the new moon, that means somebody had to be out there watching. Again, what are you watching for if it's nothing there for you to see? Because another thing that you got to understand, the phases are not something that happens in a second and then it's over with. It takes hours, sometimes even more than a day, to see a difference. Well, let me take that back. More than a day. When you talk about phases, we read it talked about going from one phase to another could be weeks. Within a week from what you call it, the new moon phase, all the way to getting to what's called the half moon or the first quarter, that's a week. Then from getting from the half moon to a full moon, that's another week. Right? It didn't make sense for somebody to be sitting out there that doggone long to try to. It was simple. It was understood. Soon as you see the first crescent, the first little bit of light, that's the first day. And that would determine that we were now going into a new month. Go ahead and finish that up.
Here the word observe in the Hebrew is shamar, and also means look narrowly for, Search.
Hold on. Look narrowly for. Search. We were searching for that little bitty slither of light. And then as you learn more about it, a lot of times you looking, when you closer to the new moon or the conjunction, I should say, what you'll find is by the time it gets dark, that moon is already near the horizon. When you're closer to a full moon, right, that moon sometimes is not even up until a certain part of the night. And it makes that whole long journey all through the night. And sometimes it becomes daytime before that moon even goes below the horizon. So they have to make sure that they were diligent and they were Johnny on the spot with it to make sure that they could identify that we are indeed going into a new month. That's what makes sense. Go ahead.
Number 8104 in Strong's. The Holiday Concise Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon defines it as watching in the sense of looking.
So hold on. They'll be talking about Hebrew, but he said the Aramaic lexicon. Other languages, other nations solidify the same understanding. This is not some revelation that we didn't know. This is history. This is understood throughout the nations. Go ahead.
Vine's complete expository dictionary of Old and New Testament words include the definitions: mark, watchman, wait, watch, look, narrowly.
So hold on. What he's telling you is, because if you just see observe, a lot of times you'll look over that. But he says some translations include words like mark, watchman, wait, watch, look, narrowly, to give you more of an indication of the actual action that's taking place and what's actually being commanded for us to do. Go ahead. The command what?
The command is to look for, wait for, watch, and mark the new moon.
Now that's clear. That's clear. Go to the next one out. Go ahead and read that for me out, please.
The astronomical new moon can't be used to determine a new month.
The astronomical moon can't be used. Go ahead.
Those who observe the biblical feast, the determination of when to start the first day of the month is important. Biblically, this is tied to lunar cycle.
So, wait, hold on. For those who observe the biblical feast, because some folks don't. Some folks don't care. But do you guys observe the biblical feast? How important is this to you to get right? How would it feel? You feeling like you done did what you needed to do, and you get to them gates, and he said, "Up, hold on, you didn't keep none of my feasts." What you mean? I kept every last one of them. Yeah, you kept them all on the wrong day. You got to be cold-blooded. So we asking the Most High for mercy at the same time. Because I done kept a whole lot of feasts on the wrong days. But asking for that mercy because we really tried. But now that we got an opportunity to get it right, we ain't prophesying in part on this matter. We know. Now we got to get it right. We got to change it. So go ahead and read that one more time.
Biblically, this is tied to the lunar cycle. But there are some different theories as to how the connection works.
So hold on. For those who observe the biblical feast, the determination of when to start the first day of the month is important. Biblically, this is tied to the lunar cycle, but there are some different theories as to how the connection works. Go ahead.
Most commonly, it is the sighting.
Hold on. Most what?
Commonly.
Most what?
Commonly.
If it's common, who is it common amongst? It's common amongst the world, the other nations. Most commonly what?
It is the sighting of the visible crescent.
It is the sighting of the visible crescent. Go ahead.
Just after sunset that is used.
Just after the sunset, like we say, you got that small window. Go ahead.
Some, however, have proposed that the astronomical new moon conjunction should be used to signal the first day of the month.
And that's where we went off. Because somebody said, oh, it makes more sense, the astronomical way of doing things. the conjunction. They got to have it right. They got the calculations. We're going to do that. And that ain't what the Most High said. Go ahead.
This study examines that question in light of the astronomical fact.
Go ahead.
Theory. It is impossible to always determine accurately by observation the day of the astronomical new moon.
That's another thing that we got to deal with. It's impossible to always determine the accuracy by actually observing with your physical eye the day of the astronomical new moon. Because I got some illustrations that I'm going to show you in a second. But what you'll find out, I'll just let you see it. I'll explain it when you see it. Go ahead.
Let me illustrate. Consider the astronomical full moon. It is easy to visualize the observation of the astronomical full moon, which is half cycle away from the astronomical new moon. I've had people tell me that they can always tell by observing which night is the full moon, just by visually comparing the fullest moons in the diagram below of the moon phases. I would say that would be fairly difficult. In the diagram, you can look at moon disks side by side. With an actual moon observation, you would have to remember on what successive nights how full it looked the other nights. Could you do that?
So, have you ever seen what appeared to be a full moon for a string of nights? Raise your hand if you've seen that. So if the full moon is the new moon, which full moon we talking about? Because it'd be looking the same. At least for 2 of them days, it looked the same. No, it's a completely full moon. We be arguing. No.
Okay, and it's a full moon, it's like in the center of the sky. And coming from the east, it's waning when the end of the month is coming. You just can see a sliver, and the next day you can't see any of it.
So the thing with that full moon, you got at least more than one day, but you at least have 2 days where it looks like it's full, right?
Right, absolutely.
Right. Now, do you ever? Yeah. So watch this. I'm going to show you something. Go to the next slide. All right. So now, on this, just according to what we can visually see, the 25th would be the astronomical new moon.
Right.
That's the conjunction. Right? Now, here's the thing. Let's see if at its pinnacle, because we would look for perfection, right? At its pinnacle, at the absolute conjunction, the moment of conjunction, can we even see it? Can we even look in the direction of the new moon? Because according to what we now know, it should be the 26th when we first see that first sliver. But a lot of people, and we were, keeping it on the completely dark moon. So let's go to the next one. Pay attention. Go ahead and read that.
Let's reason it out logically.
Uh-huh.
The astronomical full moon is the point at which the moon is in exact opposition to the sun.
So hold on. The astronomical full moon is the point at which the moon is in exact opposition to the sun. That means the earth is that one that's in the middle, right? The blue one. The smaller one to the right is the moon, and the larger one to the far left is the sun. That little bitty point, little red dot on the earth is where you are standing when you're looking at a full moon, right? This is a full moon, right? Go ahead.
That is when the sun, moon, and earth are exactly lined up with the earth in the middle. It can happen any minute of the day. If it happens when it is, say, midnight, where you live, you will see the moon very well because the side of earth you're on will be facing away from the sun and towards the moon, diagram 1. And the moon will be at its highest point in the sky.
So it says at the bottom, observing the moon at midnight and at the point of opposition, you would see the moon at its fullest. But go ahead, go to the next one. Go ahead and read that.
Now let's say that the moment of opposition happens at noon, your time. You will not see the full moon at that point because you're on the side of the earth away from the moon.
So you might be on the other side of the earth at the moment when they all align, and you wouldn't be able to see the full moon. Go ahead. Now go ahead and read that.
If you're observing the moon at midnight each night and went out the night before and the night after the point of astronomical full moon, you would, of course, miss the moment when the moon is fullest.
See that? If you were observing the moon at midnight each night and went out the night before and the night after the point of astronomical full moon, you would, of course, miss the moment when the moon is fullest. Go ahead.
It will be fullest at noon your time, but then you would be facing the sun with the moon on the other side of the earth.
That's if you were on the other side of the earth, because it's different throughout the year for different people living in different places. Go ahead.
However, on those two midnight observations, the moon would appear equal in terms of percent illumination. Percent of the moon's disk that is reflecting the sun's light, because it will be equal distances from the point of opposition.
So now you're probably thinking, okay, so what's the big deal? What is he getting? What point is he getting at? What he's saying is both of those nights, the moon would appear to be the exact same thing. So if you're trying to wait for the pinnacle of the full moon at that point, it would be to no avail because it's dead center. And both days would appear to be the exact same thing. Does that make sense? So which one would you observe? If that was to mark the new month. Too much guesswork, right? To be honest, it was similar, which we'll go into when we was keeping the dark moon. It was similar. Because it's not always just dark or seemingly dark only for one portion of one day. You may have portions of another day in addition to that day when it was completely dark. And then you're trying to figure out, okay, well, which one do we keep? Does more of the darkness fall on this day or that day? When the Most High said, I made it simple. All you got to do is when you see that first slither of light, that's when you observe it. Now, I got two of my brothers right here who have been watchers, if you will, for True Nation. Yatab, Ash, Napash. Tell all praises. Yeah, give it up, give it up, give it up. With the way we were observing it. Tell me, did it really make as much sense as now what we understand it to be? Huh? It was more complicated then? More complicated. You got something? Go ahead. You want me to read it? Go ahead.
Determination of new moon. Regarding the knowledge of the beginning of the month and the mode in which it is computed and used, the Jews are divided into two sects, one of which are the Rabbinites. They derive the beginning of the month by means of calculation from the mean motions of the two luminaries, sun and moon. No regard being had as to whether the new moon is visible already or not.
So, now we going into doctrines. The Rabbinites, the rabbis. Go ahead.
For it was their object to have a conventional time that was to begin from the conjunction of sun and moon.
So that was a doctrine of man. That wasn't what the Most High ordained it to be. Go ahead.
By the following accident, they were, as they relate themselves, induced to adopt this system. At the time when they returned to Jerusalem, they posted guards upon the tops of the mountains to observe new moon. And they ordered them to light a fire and to make a smoke, which is to be a signal for them that new moon, in fact, had been seen.
So that was another thing that they would do. They would light a fire so the smoke could be seen. These things make sense. We got into a point where we following the doctrines of men, and I don't want to do that. Let's go back.
And that was from the Chronology of Ancient Nations.
Yeah.
So by Muhammad ibn Ahmad Buran.
Yeah.
Forgotten Books, page 67.
Thawada Kanash for that reference. And Thawada to all my brethren who labored to make sure that we could get this right. My 2 brothers is beside me, bishops. My other brothers, Ash Napash, Banaya, Tazara. Who else was in there? Kanash, Darash, where you at? Brothers, Aharon, Yashamai. Am I missing anybody? Anybody else that was in there? I think that's it. I think that's everybody. So all praise be to the Most High. Go back to the PowerPoint. And I know this ain't one of them lessons, but it's needed. Because I didn't want, we got to move it over a day in terms of the new moon. Go ahead, out. All praise be to the Most High. All praises. Go ahead and read that for me. Did we miss one? Yeah.
This one?
I think we got it, yeah. No, we read that one, right? Go ahead, go to the next one.
Hear the question for those who say they can judge by eye, which is the night of full moon.
Mm-hmm.
Can you judge between 98% and 98.5% illumination, or even less of a difference? There will be months when it is impossible to judge by eye, which is the night of fullest moon.
Go ahead.
The same is true for the point of the astronomical new moon, except that it is even more difficult to determine. A person has to judge which day is closest to the day of conjunction based on something they can't even see because the moon is between the earth and the sun.
You see that? It's even more difficult when you're talking about the completely dark moon. Especially like he says, the moon is between the earth and the sun. And you can't even see it. Go ahead.
Using the astronomical new moon requires prior determination of the point of conjunction. It also requires a high degree of accuracy. What if the point of conjunction is very close to the moment of sunset? Which side of sunset it falls on will determine which day is the new moon day. And you can't even see the moon day. Can a person determine by observation when the sun, earth, and moon are exactly lined up when they can't even see the moon? No, it is impossible. Somehow a sighting of the new moon as a visible crescent seems much simpler.
It seems a whole lot simpler. Simple. Did not take a rocket scientist. Oh, we see the crescent. Oh, yep, it's there. We good. Let's party. Go ahead.
It can be done by direct observation. Either you see it or you don't.
Either you see it or you don't. Go ahead.
The only confounding factor then is cloud cover, and that wasn't in the mix originally before the flood. If the crescent is seen just after sunset, it is the beginning of the new month.
Simple. You see the crescent, it's a new month. Go ahead. Here's another reference. Go ahead.
The Encyclopedia Judaea notes, originally, the new moon was not fixed by astronomical calculators, but was solemnly proclaimed after witnesses had testified to the reappearance.
The what?
To the reappearance.
That's in capital letters. Go ahead.
Of the crescent of the moon. On the 30th of each month, the members of the High Court, Sanhedrin, assembled in a courtyard in Jerusalem named Beit Yazik, where they waited to receive the testimony of 2 reliable witnesses.
2 reliable witnesses. Go ahead.
They then sanctified the new moon. If the moon's crescent was not seen on the 30th day, the new moon was automatically celebrated on the 31st day.
Let's go to the next one. Go ahead and read that, please.
The biblical new moon is the first crescent.
The biblical new moon is the first crescent. Read.
If the Jews were keeping the feast days at the correct time, then they were also keeping the new moons at the right time. And how were they determining the new moons in Yeshua's day? Notice, during the period of the Sanhedrin, a committee of the Sanhedrin met to evaluate reports of sightings of lunar crescent. Calendars by I.E. Dodgett. Each lunar month began with the new moon sanctification by recognition of the Sanhedrin. Policy dictated that 2 witnesses in 2 different locations in or near Jerusalem.
And they would be even more specific. In or near Jerusalem. Go ahead.
And the other big reason for that is because it's going to be different by your location. So that's how to make sure they were in or near that particular area. must testify to citing the new moon crescent. A vote by the Sanhedrin was then required to officially reckon a new month beginning.
So they were serious. You know, we kind of be like, it could be, it could not be. We kept it anyway. It's all to the good, though. Most High said, you better not play. I'm serious about these feast days. He said, you better make sure you got somebody to physically see it, to see it, a sighting, and declare it. Then they said they even voted on it and made sure that they sent it out. It's official. It was serious business, especially that first one, because it's going to determine whether or not you going to keep the whole year on or off. Go ahead.
The Sanhedrin originally determined the new moon by actually observing the first faint crescent or young moon in the western sky.
You see that by actually observing it, not by just looking at the apps. So guess what we got to do? We're going to watch. We're going to use some technology, but we ain't going to depend on the technology solely. And the thing was, when you go back, our forefathers, they calculated for times when it was like storms and things of that nature. But anytime that they were able to see it, they were out there making sure that somebody could see it. Another reason why they would be not only in Jerusalem, but also near Jerusalem, outside of Jerusalem, because it's just like being here and being in San Bernardino. The weather here is not always the same as the weather in San Bernardino. It could be cloudy here, but not necessarily cloudy in San Bernardino. It might be a storm going on here where I can't see it, but somebody in San Bernardino can tell me what it do. So now that makes sense as we got brothers that are outside on the outskirts or in different states for them to be able to be like, hey, we official. Indeed. Off top. But go ahead. And we can get straight to the point, man, because I know we've been reading a lot.
New moon. The actual phase is usually a very thin crescent.
How many resources do y'all need? How many references do y'all need? Y'all got enough? Go ahead.
The original meaning of the term new moon, which is still sometimes used in non-astronomical contexts, is the first visible crescent
It's
of the moon.
over and over and over, and this is even Wikipedia. Go ahead.
After conjunction with the sun.
After conjunction, go ahead.
This thin and waxing crescent is briefly and faintly visible as the moon gets lower in the western sky after sunset.
So now, this next one right here is where I believe some got it from, and even the ones that taught us where they got it from. Go to the next one. This is in the Zondervan Bible, Compact Bible Dictionary. Go ahead and read that for me.
Definition of calendar. During the Bible, period time was reckoned solely on astronomical observations.
I can get thrown off by if I read that and I say, oh, see, it got to be the astronomical. And if I don't delve in and really do my research, I can get thrown off by that. But when it says astronomical right here, that doesn't mean the astronomical new moon. It's just speaking in terms of astronomy. That makes sense? Go to the next one.
Chinese Buddhist Encyclopedia.
Go ahead. In the whole thing, yeah, on this one.
In astronomy.
So this is what it was talking about when we referenced the Compact Bible Dictionary. Not the astronomical new moon, but in astronomy, read.
New moon is the first phase of the moon. When it lies closest to the sun in the sky as seen from the earth. More precisely, it is the instant when the moon and the sun have the same ecliptical longitude. The moon is not normally visible at this time except when it is seen in silhouette during a solar eclipse.
Now watch this, read.
The new moon, in its original meaning,
In its what?
in its original meaning
Go ahead.
of first crescent, marks the beginning of the month in lunar calendars, such as the Muslim calendar.
So now, is it just us? The Muslims, they know it. They do the same thing. What else?
And in lunisolar calendars, to the Hebrew calendar.
Whose calendar?
Hebrew calendar.
Our calendar. Not the bootleg Jews. It belongs to us. And who else?
Hindu calendar.
Even the Hindus. The East Indians. Their calendars. And who else?
And Buddhist calendar.
And even Moab. They all know. But watch this, read.
But in the Chinese calendar,
But in that old Chinese calendar, read.
the beginning of the month is marked by the dark moon.
See, that's what people get thrown off. Why are you following the Chinese man? Go ahead and read.
Although the new moon is typically depicted as a black circle, its actual phase is a very thin crescent. Because the moon does not pass directly in front of the sun except during an eclipse.
Simple. So simple. Go to the next one. I don't even know if I even need to go into Ecclesiastes chapter 43, but I will if you need me to. So off top, man, nothing is created in perfection. Everything goes through the same cycle. You got the moment when you're conceived and you can see that little bitty baby coming out. You see that little bitty, like a bib. A bib means green ear. That little bitty ear of corn or plant popping up. It's the same thing over and over. Then we hit a peak. We hit our prime. We hit a place when we're ripe. And then unfortunately at some point we begin to diminish. Decline. That's what everything does. Go to the next one. This is a month at a glance. You see that little bitty faint crescent, and then in the middle of that process, it becomes full. By the time the end is near, you get that little bitty faint. Then it's completely dark. Same thing when you die. What happens? And you close your eyes. That spirit leave. It's gone. Ain't nothing there. That's what makes sense. Go ahead, Doc.
Well, you see how the crescent, the first crescent
Come.
is on the right side,
Come.
and the last crescent is on the left side.
Uh-huh. Yeah, he's referencing to our left as we look at it. That would be the beginning. So when you actually look at the moon itself, the light literally begins on the right-hand side. Sometimes it will appear to be underneath. But for the most part, it's on the right-hand side, and it'll begin to do what we call wax till it becomes full. Then it will wane from the exact same side. It's crazy because a lot of languages, you know, today that we know of, these new languages, we go from left to right. But back when, we read from right to left. In our original tongue, we read and we wrote from right to left. Go ahead, Doc.
Even when I'm writing at home, for some reason, for some years now, I've always felt more comfortable reading from right to left.
Wow.
And I still do, but I don't do it because they say it's dyslexic.
It's what's in your DNA.
What Esau says is different, you know?
Yep.
Just like the Chinese say it's different,
Yep.
but we say the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to say the same thing.
Absolutely.
Because see, man, I mean, honestly, so, man, it's to a point now, King, where just like this sign right here, like you said, it starts off in the crescents, and then it goes and it dies out. So is Babylon at this point.
Absolutely.
It started out, and everything is in a recession.
Yep.
I can see it. And
It's
at
on
this-
the decline.
And you know what's really strange, man? I got home the other day, and I was thinking, King, I was saying, you know, it's something happening with our people. And I know one thing that's happening, but it's two other things involved with that one thing, and it makes it like a cocktail. We are under, not us, but our people are under some type of spell, man. You know, and I can see it, King.
Yep.
And it's like I realize that strongholds are positive and negative. Because you can be in the stronghold of the Father and you're safe. And you can be in the stronghold of the carnal and you have an issue. But the problem is that most of us in the stronghold of the carnal don't see the issue. Because it goes back to, okay, solid. So this is concrete. Well, it's plaster, actually.
Yeah.
There's probably a pole inside of this that's a shoring pole.
And this is called a bearing wall.
Yep.
So
Wood
this
beam.
cannot be taken out because it would make the whole ceiling weak. Like I said, I did about 30 years in construction.
God.
So I know this. But for somebody to come in here and say, you know what? That side separates the females from the males. It's not true. So tear it down. So then we all die.
Yeah.
You see, King, I'm to a point now, man, where, sir, honestly, where it's just like, I don't know, like the grafted can be grafted out and can be grafted in. Well, not necessarily the grafted, but the remnant can be grafted in at any time. So I try to have peace with all my people, but I can see the frustration and the negativity that's in them just for the sake of they don't know who they are. You know? So you get to the point of like you have to use a sermon to say, okay, listen, I'm not even speaking to you no more. Because I tried so many times and I see that you have a vibe with you. So by me continuously being with you, there's a darkness with you.
Yeah.
So they might misunderstand it. Even I might misunderstand it. But the older I get and the more wiser I get, it's like I'm leaving you alone.
Yeah.
You know? But I'm gonna stop, King. I'm just rambling. But you know, I just
for sure. All praise be to the Most High. But yeah, man. Even with this, that's why it's so important. We got to do our due diligence. It's not, you know, it's life and death right now. And that's one of the biggest reasons why we got to make sure we delve into this word. We got to do like our forefathers did. We got to say, hold on. We thought we was doing this right. We ain't been doing this right. We got to fix this. Yeah. And some folks is going to listen. Some folks ain't on yet, but they going to come on board. And some folks ain't. But, you know, Most High said 1/3. 1/3. Go back real quick. So just like we were talking about, you can go to the next one. You got all of these things that look the same, right? You see that same cycle, don't you? See that same cycle. And you even see the same cycle in seasons. Spring, also known as primavera, the first, that's when things begin to be born and grow. Right? They hit their peak towards the end of summer. Then there's a decline. That's literally why they call autumn fall. Things begin to fall. And then they die in the winter at the end until they're reborn. It's crazy because in the dead of winter, with all of that snow, what you don't understand is things happening, things in the work. It's more than enough water there. And by the time that next phase comes in spring, the ground has been prepared for new life. Yes, sir. Yeah. We wouldn't call it reincarnation, but I'll talk to you more about it. I wouldn't call it reincarnation, but that's scriptural. Like even when it talks about us as man, this is not our only time living here. Just because this is only our experience that we know in this particular body, but the Bible says that we've been here before. Just like John the Baptist. He didn't know, but Yahweh Shai, he told the disciples, he said that that's Elijah. So, yeah, absolutely. Go to the next one. It says, besides the spiritual realm, name one creation that doesn't go through this cycle. That's the spiritual realm. And even if you want to talk about time, technically it did when it was created. Because prior to that, they call the creator the Most High Yahweh. Yahweh literally means he exists. It lets you know he has no beginning nor an ending. Everything goes through that process. Go to the next one. We're getting ready to end it. This is language and interpretation in Syriac text of Ben Sura. Go ahead. So we're going to try to breeze through here. So this is the, everybody go to Ecclesiasticus in your Apocrypha. (43). Now we ain't started at 1. We can just get straight to it. Start at 6. We can start at 6.
All right. Sirach, chapter 43, verse 5. 6. He made the moon also to serve in her seasons for a declaration of time.
For a declaration of times. Go ahead.
And a sign of the world.
And a sign of the world. All right. And that sign even has something to do with us being the children of Israel, because he said in the book of Jeremiah, he said, as long as you see that moon and them stars in the sky, he said, Israel is on this earth. Don't let nobody tell you that Israel is done away with. That is, I'm just a Christian. I'm just a child of God. I'm just a human. He said, don't let nobody tell you that foolishness. Go ahead.
From the moon is the sign of feast.
From the moon is the sign of feast. Go ahead.
A light that decreaseth in her perfection.
A light that decreaseth in her perfection. So folks might try to say, oh, see, it decreased in her perfection. That means it start full and it start. No, that ain't what that's saying. And it's two different references from 7 to 8. Right? Go ahead. Verse 8.
The month.
The month. So now when it's talking about the month, yes, referencing the moon, but more so, the month is the actual phases of the moon. That moon cycle. Go ahead.
After her name, increasing wonderfully in her changing.
So it says the moon is called after her name, meaning the moon. They're synonymous. That they're interchangeable, moon and month. That's why when you used to watch, who used to watch them old cowboy films? And they would say many moons ago. You probably be like, many moon? What are you talking? He meant many months ago. Absolutely. And one of the many ways that you know that our people were the indigenous people here in the Americas. Indeed. But go ahead.
The month is called after her name, increasing wonderfully in her changing.
Increasing wonderfully in her changing. Because that's what it does throughout that cycle. Go ahead.
Being an instrument of the armies above, shining in the firmament of heaven.
So let's look up here real quick, 43 and 7. It says, because from the moon are the signs of the festivals. So we need to get this right in order to make sure that we got the feast days correct. If we don't get this right, we don't have the feast days right. We out of compliance in a major way. It says a luminary that ceases at the end. Translation is important. Because if you just go with this, you might be a bit confused. Well, here's another translation of the same thing that we're reading right here. This is not something different. This is the same thing, just a different translation. A luminary that ceases at the end. Is that not pretty clear? That at the end of the cycle, it does what? It's dark. And it tells you, it goes into, it agrees with the Greek instead of that which they interpreted, delight. And at the end, it goes into, and it says in its circuit completion. However, the translation of, what would that be? I don't want to get it wrong. If I'm not mistaken, that's Kadash. Luminary in both Greek and Syrian may be a case of polygenesis. So, it just delves deeper into it. Even in 43 and 8, it says the new moon is like its name, and it becomes great exceedingly in the season, meaning in the process of it going through its cycle. So it's important that we use other resources. Go to the next one. So even, I don't know, any of y'all used to be Catholic or your family used to be Catholic? You know that a lot of the Apocrypha is in the Catholic Bible, right? How many of you guys knew that? You can go in there and you can read it. And this is what it'll read like. It says, and then the moon, ever punctual to mark the times, an everlasting sign. It is the moon that signals the feast, a luminary that wanes after being full. The moon derives its name from hers. She waxes wonderfully in her phases. Banner of the host of high, on high, shining in the vault of heaven. That's it. These people sit up here because there's people that use these scriptures and they be like, ah, ha, see? Ain't no ah, ha. Now this is what you got to make sure. This is going to be the last slide. Watch this. Put that up there. You got to make sure you beware of who you following. Don't be following Snoop. Because he got on a gird. Don't be following anybody. Look who in the background. It's concubines. Don't just be following anybody. We got to make sure we get this right. All praises be to the Most High.